Now, in this rather impromptu edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, and I say that because I only put this question up yesterday afternoon, we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked how you feel about Rosario Dawson playing Ahsoka Tano in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. I'll then also be reading and responding to some of your comments, but I won't be showing off any artwork this week because I haven't got too much so far, so I'll save what I have got this week for next weekend's video. And if you're interested in sharing your art or whatever else it might be, do send it to me at the email address in the description below. Okay, and before really getting down to it here, let me say that as far as I know, this has not been officially confirmed by Lucasfilm that Rosario Dawson will be playing Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, However, pretty much every major entertainment news outlet is running with this story, and that usually doesn't happen unless there's something to it. In other words, usually when there's this much smoke, there's a fire somewhere. But yes, this could still all turn out to be a false rumor. And keeping that in mind, let's now get to the results of the poll, where we'll see that the majority, 38%, were neutral or didn't care or were unsure either way about this one. 27% then said they were extremely happy and were excited, and 28% were mostly happy or excited. We then had 5% of people who weren't all too happy about this, and another 3% who weren't excited about this at all. And as always here, thank you to everyone who votes, and especially to those of you who leave comments. I do greatly appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts on all these different topics week in and week out. And with that said, and without further ado, let's get to those comments, starting as we always do with the top-rated comment, which this week came to us from Anthony Curly Fries, who said, I love the character Ahsoka and all her time in Clone Wars, but I'm worried about her appearance in live action. I don't know how well the character will translate, and I don't want them to butcher her. Dragging her character out may not be a good thing, but we'll see. And despite there being quite a bit of excitement in the comments, and the fact that 55% of people voted very or mostly excited, there was also a lot of hesitation or a lot of people saying they have some doubts about this, or that they're going to have to wait and see how this all plays out or works out. And I do kind of put myself in that category, because I am excited about this. Ahsoka is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you know I talk about her all the damn time. But I don't know how well she'll translate to live action. I don't know how often or how successfully something that originates in animation or in a cartoon can make that crossover. I mean, not long ago I watched all 4 seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I loved it. And then I watched the live-action movie, and though, yes, the movie itself is just plain bad, something about seeing the characters live action felt off. And for whatever reason, at least in my opinion here, I think it's much, much easier to make the transition the other way, to go from live action to animation. The Clone Wars series is a good example of that. I don't have a problem with, I guess you could say, getting stylized versions of some of our prequel characters. For some reason, my brain is more accepting of that. But if you take something out of that medium or that originates in it and try to make a realistic version of it, I think it's much trickier. And hopefully what I'm trying to say here makes some sense. Anyway, for now, let's move on to this comment from Brandon Evans, who said, don't know how to feel about it. Was a nice story without Jedi or Sith being in it. We also had this comment from Veta Beta, who said, imagine being mad about Force users in a Star Wars show. And I don't know that people are mad about Force users in The Mandalorian. Hell, Baby Yoda, a Force user, is arguably the most popular character in the whole show. I just think some people wanted to see a different side of Star Wars, to show that it doesn't have to be about the Force or Force users. And don't get me wrong, it's my personal favorite part of Star Wars, the Force, Jedi, Sith, all of that. But if you really want to expand Star Wars, I feel like you have to explore different parts of it. You can't make every show or movie strictly about the Jedi and Sith, not so much because it gets old, though it might, but because there's only so much you can do with that concept. And I look at a movie like Rogue One, beloved by the fans for the most part, and considered by many the best of the Disney Star Wars films. And outside of Darth Vader, there's no Jedi or Sith in it. It's not about the Force at all, and it worked extremely well and is proof that Star Wars can work without the Force or with just a smattering of it. Okay, and kind of going along with that, we have this comment here from Frank the Noob, who said, I kind of like how The Mandalorian doesn't feature major named characters. It's its own standalone show, and I like that. Bringing in other established characters from other series waters it down a bit. We also had this comment from Harry C, who said, "Why can't we have a story that stands on its own without having to inject bits of already popular stuff into it? We don't need cameos or crossovers, just continue telling a good story." And this is another argument I understand and pretty much agree with. And it was nice to see that at least Season 1 didn't resort to bringing in any fan favorite characters, that it relied solely on the new ones it had created and let them establish themselves. That said, I think we all knew it was only a matter of time before we got some major cameos. And I say cameo for a good reason here, because I don't know how much we'll actually see of Ahsoka in Season 2. Again, these are rumors, so who knows if they're even true, but most of them seem to be reporting it'll be a smaller role, as in we may see her in an episode or two and that's it, not that this is going to suddenly become the Ahsoka show. Okay, moving on now, we have this comment from Dauberzilla who said, "This sounds really interesting, but I do wish that they somehow got Ashley to play her. She might be the tie between Din and Bo-Katan and the Death Watch Mandalorians. She could also be his master, teaching him how to use a lightsaber. So many possibilities." And I too, of course, wish they could somehow get Ashley Eckstein to play this part. More on that in a bit. And though I agree there's so much they could do with her here, again, I wouldn't be surprised if she's not going to be in this anywhere near as much as some think or maybe hope she'll be. I think you may be onto something when you say she could be the link between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, otherwise known as the Mandalorian, of course. The other strong possibility, I think, is that she'll have something to do with the Baby Yoda story arc, maybe even have something to do with its resolution. I mean, obviously she knew Yoda, so maybe she knows something about his people and will take him home. Who knows? Either way, again, I don't know that we'll be seeing a ton of her in this show. Okay, next up here we have this comment from Jonah Key who said, "I like the idea of Ahsoka being in The Mandalorian, but I always thought that Ahsoka would be kind of weird in live action, since her look is so hard to nail. If they can get the skin to look natural and the head tails to look good, I think it could work." Honestly here, I don't know how they're going to do this. The headpiece that they'll have to use with the tails and such will be so cumbersome that I almost hope Dawson will be in a motion capture suit and they're going to do this digitally. There's just such a fluidity and grace to the character, from the way she fights to the way she just carries herself, that it's hard to imagine someone in a suit with a giant bulky headpiece pulling this off. And that's no disrespect intended towards Rosario Dawson. I think overall she looks the part and has the body and athleticism to pull it off. It's just that damn headpiece that's going to be a big problem, unless we never see Ahsoka fighting or otherwise in action, which would no doubt greatly disappoint a lot of people. Alright, next up here we have this comment from Eric Hurlboss, who said, "I just hope they'll dub the voice actor's voice over hers." Well, if they did put Dawson in a mocap suit and did this digitally, using Ashley Eckstein's voice would be easy enough. Though if that is the plan, and I don't think it is, this is just pure speculation on my part, I'd ask, what's the point of casting Dawson then, especially if you dub over her voice? At that point, you'd be better off just hiring whoever could pull off the movements and such the best. Either way, it'd be hard for my brain to accept any voice but Ashley Eckstein's as Ahsoka. Those two are one and the same at this point, in large part because Ashley really loves the character and has owned her over the years. And maybe if Ahsoka the White doesn't talk much, maybe if she's the strong silent type at this point, they will dub Ashley's voice over Dawson's. I don't think they do that, but who knows. Okay, and next up here we have this comment from JB who said, "I remember some years ago she expressed interest in playing the live part. She loves the character, so I'm in." And they're of course referring to the fact that Rosario Dawson has talked about playing Ahsoka before and seems to be a pretty big fan of the character. And if that is the case, maybe going along with what I was just talking about before, she wouldn't have an issue with her voice being dubbed over by Ashley Eckstein, also assuming this wouldn't come off looking horrible. And maybe, hopefully, her goal, Dawson's goal, is to bring the best possible version of Ahsoka to life, and I personally think that almost has to include Ashley Eckstein's voice. Moving on now, we have this comment from CJ Crabbill, who said, "Remember, Dave Filoni is going to be there to guide this character. Between him and Favreau, I have faith that they will do justice to this character. It's not impossible for them to screw it up, just highly unlikely." We also have this comment from DB007 who said, For everyone who is worried Dave Filoni, who created Ahsoka, the Clone Wars, and Rebels, is behind The Mandalorian, he'll make sure his favorite creation isn't ruined or screwed over. He'll make sure she's perfect. Ahsoka is safe in her creator's hands. Then there's this comment from Isaac who said, as long as Filoni handles her, I'm good. We also had this comment from Contraband who said, if Dave Filoni trusts her with this role, then so do I. And that's the thing here. Dave Filoni, who does indeed work on the show and loves the character Ahsoka, maybe more than anyone else out there since he created her, if he's cool with this, if he thinks Rosario Dawson works in this role, then I say bring it on. However, maybe he was told to make this happen, and he's not really doing it so much by his choice, which kind of brings us to this comment from Brandon Drake, who said, honestly, not too happy about it. She is one of my favorite characters, but I feel like they are only using her to gain more favor with fans after the disastrous trilogy they released. Maybe, but it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing, because if they never bring Ahsoka to live action or do other things fans ask for, then you'll have the people who say they ignore the fans and they don't care. But if they do them, you'll have the people who say they only try to pander to the fans or are just trying to win them back. In this case, if the story is there, and more on that in a moment, and if this is something Dave Filoni is all for, not that they're just telling him to do this, then again, I say bring it on. Okay, and finally here we have two more comments, starting with this one from Call Me Car, who said, I just hope that Disney doesn't end up milking Ahsoka's character after their own attempt at making a new female Jedi blew up in their face. And we had this comment from James P, who said, I love Ahsoka. I grew up watching Clone Wars, and she's easily one of the best characters in Star Wars all time. But I can't help but feel like she overstayed her welcome. She was spectacular in Clone Wars, and her fight with Vader was entertaining, but after that I felt there was no need for her to be around anymore. Even then, I look forward to seeing her in the upcoming Clone Wars episodes. The Mandalorian, not so much. And really, I'm kind of torn here, because there's that part of me that says the perfect way for her story to end was to be killed by Darth Vader. It adds to the overall tragedy of that character's story, but at the same time, Ahsoka, for the most part, has always existed in the shadow of that character, in the shadow of Anakin Skywalker. Her story has always been so closely tied to his, which is not a bad thing, mind you, that it would be curious to see what this character is like without him. Obviously, The Mandalorian takes place after Return of the Jedi, after Vader's redemption in that movie. And I think there's a good chance, by this point, Ahsoka would have encountered Luke Skywalker, and he would have, of course, told her what happened with Anakin in the end, thus, in a sense, liberating Ahsoka from Anakin/Vader. In other words, if this can start a whole new chapter in that character's life, in Ahsoka's life, and if that character can become interesting on her own, which is certainly the case, I think, then I say keep using her, tell this part of her story. But if this does come off just feeling fan servicey, to create a new term, I guess, if they can't find something interesting to tell about her character now, and they keep using her just because, just to keep luring in fans who love her, then honestly, I wish she would have been killed by Vader on Malachor. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Are you excited to see Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, or not so much? Do you think Rosario Dawson is the right pick? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.